Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're diving into a case that literally shook a small college town to its absolute core. We're going to look at exactly how modern science, specifically a really complex web of digital forensics and genetic tracking, is illuminating some of our darkest mysteries.
So how exactly does modern science solve a mystery in the dark? To understand how investigators piece together these massive puzzles when there are zero immediate suspects, we're mapping out the chilling timeline of a case that captivated the entire nation. I mean, how does law enforcement go from a chaotic crime scene with no clear motive to a definitive arrest? Well, the answer lies in the incredible, and sometimes kinda controversial, advancements in forensic tech.
Part 1. Tragedies in Idaho, a tale of two investigations.
Part 2. Night of November 13, the timeline.
Okay, so our timeline begins at a 3-story off-campus rented house. It's built right into a hillside in the rural college town of Moscow, Idaho. And get this is a town that hadn't seen a single murder since 2015. By 2 a.m., all the roommates were home. We know from their digital footprint that one of the victims, Xana, actually received a DoorDash order around 4 a.m. and was scrolling on TikTok at 4:12 a.m. Detectives believe the fatal attacks happened in this incredibly narrow, terrifying 25-minute window between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. Surviving roommates later reported hearing strange noises, crying, and one even saw a figure dressed in black with a mask walk right past her and out a sliding glass door. Completely frozen in shock, she locked herself in her room. And it actually wasn't until 11:55 a.m. the next day that a 911 call was finally placed for an unconscious person.
The reality they discovered that afternoon was just unimaginable. 4 young lives were tragically lost to fatal stab wounds that night. Madison Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernadle, and Ethan Chapin. This brutal event sparked a truly unprecedented, massive response from local, state, and federal law enforcement, who immediately hit the ground running to find answers.
Part 3. Connecting the clues, the massive hunt. The sheer scale of the police response here was staggering. Investigators were frantically working to track down a killer who left behind very few obvious leads. They brought in nearly 130 law enforcement personnel from the Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Police, and the FBI. That is a massive team analyzing a complex crime scene, processing digital media, and coordinating this high-stakes hunt.
And the public was incredibly engaged. They submitted over 15,000 tips through a dedicated FBI tip line and email. But here's the double-edged sword of the digital age. While some of those tips were definitely helpful, this huge wave of public interest also led to rampant online misinformation. You had internet sleuths, TikTokers, and even self-proclaimed psychics spreading baseless rumors that literally disrupted the actual investigation.
But investigators didn't let all that noise distract them. After neighborhood surveillance footage caught a white or light-colored car circling the area multiple times, including a 4th pass right at 4:04 a.m., they painstakingly searched the records of approximately 22,000 fifth-generation white Hyundai Wantras. To put that into perspective, that is an absolute mountain of vehicle records to sift through.
Out of all that data, the investigation zeroed in on 3 absolutely crucial breadcrumbs. First, that white Elantra we just mentioned. Second, cell phone data. They found a device that turned off right before the murders and then reconnected hours later south of Moscow. And wild enough, this same phone had pinged the cell tower near the victim's house at least 12 times in the months prior. Finally, the third and most vital piece of physical evidence, a tan leather knife sheath left on a bed which yielded a single male profile of touch DNA.
Part 4. The genetic genealogy breakthrough. So what happens when the DNA found on that knife sheath doesn't match anything in the National Law Enforcement Database? Well, investigators turn to a real game changer, investigative genetic genealogy. This allows experts to take crime scene DNA and compare it against public ancestral databases to map out a suspect's family tree. Initially, a private company only found a distant relative, sharing about 70 centimorgans of DNA, which is roughly the equivalent of a great-great-grandparent. But when the FBI took over and utilized sites like GED Match and MyHeritage, the whole investigation shifted. They discovered a much closer familial match. By measuring 250 shared centimorgans of DNA, which is just the unit they use to determine how closely related two people are, the FBI narrowed their focus directly onto one specific family, and ultimately onto 28-year-old Brian Kohberger. And here's the part that is just wild. Kohberger was a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. He was studying less than 8 miles away from the crime scene and had even studied under a highly renowned forensic psychologist.
Part 5. Arrest
and guilty plea. Once they had that genetic breakthrough, things moved incredibly fast, from covert surveillance to a decisive legal resolution. The net really started to tighten around Kohberger at his family home in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. During surveillance there, agents actually watched him wearing surgical gloves, completely cleaning the inside and outside of his car, and putting his trash into separate Ziploc bags inside a neighbor's garbage can. He was arrested on December 30th, 2022, extradited back to Idaho, and after a ton of legal filings and a change of venue, he ultimately entered a guilty plea on July 2nd, 2025.
Now, to avoid the death penalty, Kohberger pled guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. This resulted in 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. But of course, the legal saga took another twist. In July 2026, he controversially filed a petition claiming innocence, alleging he was coerced by his former defense team and tried to withdraw his plea. State officials have publicly stood by the conviction for sure and are actively challenging that petition.
Part 6. The broader context.
As we process this super modern, tech-driven resolution of the Moscow case, I think it's vital we step back and contrast it with mysteries from an era before we had all these amazing tools. Take the 2001 disappearance of Amber Hoops, for example. She vanished from an auto body shop in Idaho Falls. Now, despite evidence of an abduction and 2 viable suspects, her body was never found, and to this day, it remains a chilling cold case. The Moscow murders were solved in a matter of weeks using digital forensics, cell tracking, and cutting-edge DNA tracing. The Amber Hoops case highlights a really stark contrast between investigative eras. It shows us exactly why these modern forensic advancements are so absolutely crucial.
We also have to remember the intense public scrutiny and rumors that swirled during the Moscow investigation. It's a stark reminder of the dangers of the digital age. True justice relies purely on objective, factual evidence, like touch DNA and verified cell data, not on online speculation and amateur sleuthing that just ends up disrupting the actual police work.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought today. As forensic technology continues to evolve at lightning speed, how many of yesterday's unsolvable cold cases will become tomorrow's scientific breakthroughs? As science transforms how we map out the truth, what long-buried secrets will genetic genealogy uncover next? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.